let there be light. Where did darkness come from? And if you read in the next verse, it says, and he divided the light from the darkness. Who made the darkness? Day 2, he created sky. On day 3, he created dry land and the sea. And he created plants and vegetations. That's day 3. Day 4, he created light again. What is going on? Why are we creating 2 lights? Did you forget? No. He's all wise. The first light God made is a realm. And that's why you will see, if you read in Genesis 1, God never told us what he wants us to do with that light. He says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. So he made 2 different lights, because that first one was actually realm. That was where Adam was. Adam was in light. Adam was in light. The Bible says God dwells in light, unapproachable. That is to a man who fell. Adam was in light. You know, between Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 and Genesis chapter 1 verse 2 is an unknown number of years that is unknown to the human race. We don't know. But we know that the Bible says in Genesis 1 verse 1 that in the beginning God created what? The heavens and the earth. Now in verse 2 he says, and the earth was without form, and that earth was void, and darkness was upon the face of the earth. Did God create a formless earth? Do you know what it means to be void? Void means empty. You don't create emptiness. Emptiness means the absence of creation. So what happened? In Genesis 1:1, he made 2 reality, 2 worlds. One was heaven, the other one was earth. But in verse 2, you will see that nothing was said about heaven because everything remained as what the Bible said. The earth was what? Without form. And it was what? Void. And what? Darkness was upon the face of the deep. And it says the Spirit of God began to move. The creative force of the Godhead hovers over the water. Something happened. That darkness there, God didn't create it. What God actually made was Lucifer. But when he did what he did, when he came down to this place, because this was where he was casted to. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. He says heaven shall rejoice, and everyone who dwells there. But listen to what he says in the next phrase. He said, but woe to the inhabitants of the earth. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Verse 2, the earth was without form, it was void, it was dark. And in Revelation 12:12, the Bible says what here? It says, rejoice, ye heavens, and all that dwell in them. Why? Nothing is wrong with you. But to those who dwell on earth, he said, woe unto the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you. This was where he was cast to. Having great wrath, because he knows that his end, or he has but a short time. And in verse 13, he says, and when the dragon saw that he was cast onto the earth, he says, he persecuted the woman. I'm reading scriptures. So in creation, everything God made was in ones. One sky, one land, one water. There are no 2 kinds of water. But when he will create light, there were 2 lights mentioned in that chapter. One was in verse 3. The other one was in verse 14. So the day and night that was divided by the first light, you will see that that day and that night were capitalized. Because it's a realm. It's a place in the spirit. But if you look in verse 14, the light that was created in verse 14, the day and night that was separated by that light that God created in verse 14 has small letter D and small letter M. And if you keep reading to verse 15 and 16, you will see that God was specific what he wanted that light to begin to do. But in the first one, he didn't tell us. He just said, and God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw that it was good. And he moved on. It was a realm. But when he would do it again, in verse 14, he was very, very detailed, telling us what those lights were going to be doing. It was at that time that God made the stars also. It says this will be for seasons. So that was a kairos realm that God put together. That was where Adam was no longer found. When God came and said, where are thou? And Adam don't even understand. He had no clue what God was talking about. He didn't answer that question and say, Lord, I fell from it. No, he did not. He could not. How could he? He had no clue because he does not exist there anymore. Everything became so material. Everything about Adam became what? Of this realm. And that's why, don't blame people. When you are telling them about God, telling them about spiritual things, and they are looking at you like you are crazy, it is not their fault. The Bible said the God of this world had what? Blinded their heart, that they should not what? Receive the glorious light of the gospel. Because if they do, they come to knowledge of what is.